Welcome to another video from Demystifying Proposals. In this video, we're going to talk about red team management, the step-by-step process to make your proposal review as effective as possible. In this section, we're going to talk about the preparations you should make for red team. Your content expectations for red team is that this should be close to final draft, about 90% complete. Again, note that different companies set this level differently, so use whatever your company uses. But generally speaking, your red team content should be pretty complete, 90, 95%, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, depending on the company. The purpose of the red team is to conduct a full review of all sections of the technical volume, preferably using the same evaluation criteria as the government, whatever's in section M, however they're going to evaluate the proposal. It occurs generally about a week after Pink Team, and that means that it's held approximately 2 weeks prior to the submission deadline. You should have nearly complete sections with all graphics and in at least draft form with action captions. Maybe those are just in progress, but they should be at least started. We try to reuse the same reviewers for Pink Team and Red Team. This is so they get familiar with the proposal strategy, but also so they get a chance to see and measure the progress on the proposal sections, particularly how their comments at Pink Team may have been integrated into the Red Team draft. Reviewers should understand the solution well enough to provide an effective review. Reviewers should also be managers who can evaluate the efficacy of the management section or volume. You need to assign at least 3 reviewers for each section. So if you're breaking up your technical approach and your management approach and your past performance volumes into different sections for review, because they're long enough that you can't have anybody reviewing all of them, they just wouldn't have time. You need to make sure you have at least 3 reviewers for each of the sections that you're putting out for review. Roles in the organization for reviewers. Generally speaking, your core reviewers are your capture team, SMEs who are not authors, an adjacent business lead who can do that efficacy of the management section, the proposal operations director or manager, and if your company has one, a chief growth officer. Alternate or additional reviewers might include key subcontractors, but make sure that you have a teaming agreement in place with them to protect your intellectual property. Other business leads might also be included as alternate reviewers if they have enough familiarity with the solution and or the management approach to be effective. In terms of time for the review, reviewers should have at least 8 hours to review the content, longer if they have more content to review. General guidance when it comes to red team reviews is to be sure to send out the invitations well in advance of when you need the reviewers, preferably shortly after the pink team. Be sure to invite enough reviewers so that no one reviewer has to review more than 10 to 15 pages, and be sure to invite enough reviewers so that each section is reviewed by at least 3 people. Be sure to check with the reviewers. Don't assume that they accept the invitation and that means they actually have the time to do the review. You want to make sure that you, as the proposal manager or the capture manager or your solution architect, somebody checks with the reviewers to make sure that they're going to have the time to do the review. Be sure to include the timeline for the review in the invitation that you send out for the reviews themselves. The time the document will come out, the time they will have to review, when comments are due, and when the review slide is due. Some proposal managers schedule all of these reviews at once, so they schedule the pink team at the same time as they schedule the red team, they schedule the gold team and the white glove using the proposal schedule as their guide. Others wait until each review has been conducted to schedule the next one. Either is fine. You just want to make sure that you schedule your red team well in advance of when you need the people to show up. Generally speaking, it's a best practice to include an in-brief invitation as part of the proposal review process. Sometimes you don't have time for an in-brief meeting, but you still want to prepare the slides and send them out with the invitation for the reviewers so that they have a chance to understand what the proposal is all about. So there are generally 3 sections to the in-brief. This includes the proposal team members and their assignments so that the reviewers have context for who will be on the debrief, who gets invited to the debrief with them. The capture strategy, the solution information, so that reviewers have insight into the win themes and the discriminators, what you're trying to get your proposal to sell and to say, and a deep composition of the RFP itself. So how the proposal outline has been organized relative to the proposal instructions, the evaluation criteria, and the statement of work or the performance work statement, especially if there's anything weird about the instructions and the evaluation criteria. They're not quite 100% meshed, for example. You might want to explain how you made sure that the outline was still going to be compliant. You should include the assignments in the deck as well as in the email invitation. And you want to be sure to include instructions on how the review will be conducted. Is it going to be virtual? Is it going to be in person, hybrid? How long the reviewers will have to review? So the deadline for the output submissions, and what outputs are you expecting? Comments in the document and usually a debrief slide are the standard outputs you generally have for a review. If your company does things differently, make sure that the reviewers understand exactly what the expectations are. The next invitation you might send out is an actual review time calendar schedule. It's generally a best practice to put an invitation on the reviewers' calendars as a reminder of the time that they have for the review. So the start time and the end time, and usually set it to free so it doesn't block their calendars from other meetings that they may have scheduled. But if you've scheduled the review several weeks in advance, it's a good way for them to remember, oh yeah, I have a red team going on today, so that they can be prepared. The last invitation that you need to send out is for the debrief itself. You want to schedule the debrief and make sure that you have a debrief slide for each section of the proposal for the reviewers to use. So you have a technical approach, a management approach, past performance, resumes, whatever you're asking the reviewers to review, you need to have a set of debrief slides for each of those sections. The debrief slides generally ask for both a SWOT analysis and a rating of the content in total. So the SWOT analysis is what's good about the content you reviewed, what needs improvements, and suggestions for how to improve the content. The ratings are usually red, yellow, green, blue, red being really bad and blue being perfect. Most proposals end up in the yellow green space. If you can get to blue, that's the best. Be sure to invite the authors to the debrief too, because you want them to hear the feedback firsthand from the reviewers. You want to coach them that they can ask questions, clarifications about what the reviewers said or what they're asking them to do, but not to challenge the reviewers, not to tell the reviewers that they're just wrong about what they did, even if it's something that's like a compliance issue or a decision that you've made about strategy. You can have the proposal manager or the capture manager tell them the reviewer separately, but don't have the authors question the reviewers in the middle of the debrief. So in this section, we're going to talk about the execution of the red team. So red team execution obviously involves working with the authors. Presumably you've already been doing that through the pink team process, but you want to make sure, again, to check the status at the daily stand-ups. You want to reiterate the schedule for them so that they understand what the deadlines for the drafts are. You just want to make sure that you're doing that at every turn so that there aren't any surprises for the authors and so that they know what your expectations are. You want to review the drafts to make sure that the content is going to be red team ready. As we talked about, your red team ready document should be a 90% complete document. So you need to review and make sure that the authors are really getting there. And if they're not, then you need to talk to the authors about where they're, what the plans are and is there anything that they need to help them be successful. If the author is still struggling to provide content, you may have to escalate that concern to senior leadership because at this point in the process, you really need to get the document done. And that author just may not be the right author for this particular content. Once the drafts have been released for Red Team by the authors, you want to do a preliminary edit, just like you did at Pink Team, and a format to make sure that the document is ready for the Red Team reviewers so that they're not distracted by poor grammar or bad formatting, but can concentrate on the proposal content. Assuming that you have time on the calendars to schedule the Red Team in-brief, you want to lead the in-brief using the slides that you developed with the Capture Manager and the Solution Architect. You want to remind the reviewers the timeline for the review. The document will come out at this time, the reviewers will have this much time to review, the contents are due by this time, and the SWOT slide is due by this time. And as the Red Team is going on, you want to monitor the inputs in SharePoint or whatever system you're using for proposal development to make sure that the reviewers are actually reviewing and to help the reviewers as need. You might also need to remind the reviewers about doing the SWOT slide and not just the comments in the document. When it comes to the debrief, you may need to consolidate the reviewers' comments. If you're using SharePoint or some other proposal system, that probably will consolidate all the documents for you. But if you have offline reviewers, you'll need to merge their documents into the master Word document so that the authors have all of the comments in one document. Rather than review each comment throughout the document as part of your Red Team debrief, we suggest using the slides. That way you have 1 or 2 slides for each reviewer to provide their SWOT analysis. The reviewer should provide 1 set of slides for each section they reviewed. You want to organize the slides by section, and you want to organize them, generally speaking, in the hierarchy or the seniority of the reviewers. So any C-suite reviewers would go first, followed by the business lead, followed by adjacent business leads, followed by other delivery personnel, followed by whoever else you're having review. As I said, you want to organize the slides by section so that all the reviews for one particular section are conducted together. So you do all of your technical approach, and then you do all of your management approach, each of the reviewers, and you do all of your past performance, each of the reviewers. That way, the authors get a consolidated look at each section. You want to also lead a discussion to try and deconflict suggestions from the reviewer team. So if you have 2 reviewers who are giving different advice on how to move forward with a particular section, you may have that conversation during the debrief. If it's going too far, then you may need to table that discussion for another time, but be sure to set up that meeting right away if you need to have another discussion. Remind the authors again that they can ask clarifying questions of the reviewers, but not to argue with them. A quick note. Sometimes the Red Team goes badly. Sometimes Pink Team recovery wasn't thorough enough. Now, as the proposal manager, you should be monitoring for this, but sometimes things happen. Sometimes the reviewers have a different idea about the solution. Hopefully this came up at Pink Team, but sometimes the first time the solution is fully baked is at Red Team. In this case, as the schedule allows, it may be necessary to hold a second Red Team, or, if you will, a Magenta team. Use the same process as for Red Team, monitoring content frequently. Make sure the reviewers are prepped as to what can and cannot be done about the content or the solution. Sometimes reviewers want the world, and you should prepare them to not understand that sometimes just can't happen. And be sure business development leadership, the proposal operations manager or director, or the chief growth officer, are apprised of the situation and prepared to help as needed. Now that you've conducted your Red Team, it's time for Red Team recovery. You want to consolidate all of the debrief slides for each section and post them to the SharePoint for the proposal. You need to make sure that you prepare the proposal documents for the next review. Authors should not be making updates in the Red Team documents for the Gold Team. You should create a different set of documents, usually called Gold Team, and leave the Red Team documents where they were for the review, from the review, so that they're available for historical purposes. You want to conduct a meeting with the authors on the Red Team review. You want to talk about the process for adjudicating the comments. Hopefully you did this already at Pink Team, If you didn't, you need to tell them what you want them to do to adjudicate comments. Do you want them to resolve the comment? Do you want them to reply to the comment? Do you want them to delete the comment? All of these are acceptable, but you need to give them guidance on what they should do. And you want to tell them the schedule for the next review. Usually at red team, that's gold team. Although, as we just talked about, maybe you have to do a magenta. We'll hope for your sake that you don't. You can do this meeting at the next stand up, provided that you don't have a lot to discuss beyond how to adjudicate comments and the schedule for the next review. If there are extensive changes that need to be done, you may need to have a separate meeting. It also may be necessary to have one-on-one meetings with each author or a particular author to make sure that they understand what needs to be done for red team recovery. Be sure to include the capture manager and the solution architect as appropriate, and make sure that the author doesn't feel attacked. We're just trying to get to a winning proposal. You want to work with the proposal team to continue to make sure that the documents are going to be ready for the next review. So you want to check their status at the daily stand-ups, just as you have. You want to reiterate the deadline for the drafts. When is Gold Team? And you want to review the content to make sure it's going to be Gold Team ready. If it's not, if an author is not getting the content done the way that you want them to, maybe you need to have a conversation with them one-on-one to determine what can be done. How can you help? What are their impediments to getting the content ready? If they are still struggling, then you may have to escalate that conversation to senior leadership and find an alternative for getting to Gold Team, because Gold Team should be a 95% ready document. And so you can't be lagging behind. It has to be done. We hope you enjoyed this video from Demystifying Proposals. Please comment and share.